This is the Agribusiness Report. I'm Tony St. James. We're joined today by Dr. Jim Baird. He's representing the 4th Congressional District of Indiana. He's a member of the House Ag Committee, also serves on the Science, Space, and Technology Committees. And Dr. Baird, great to see you again.
It's good to see you, Tony. It really is.
Well, the first time we had the opportunity to meet, it was in the first year of your first session. If you compare where you are now to where you were then, do you think you've learned a whole lot more?
I've learned a lot of things, and I've learned that being in a minority is not where I want to be, I can tell you that. But there's a whole lot of water that's going under the bridge in that period of time. But I am excited to be a part of agriculture. It's been good to me all of my life. I grew up on a farm, and so the things that people are doing today in agriculture is just phenomenal. The technology that we're using, in fact, Tony, I feel like that the technology has drawn some of our young people back into the agricultural area, and they're sharp young people, and so they're going to take agriculture to the next levels and beyond, and so that's exciting.
And it really ties, I imagine, your two committees together, both the Agriculture Committee and that Science and Technology Committee. That seems like there is a convergence of those two.
That's true, and it's the time I spent in my graduate programs and working on the PhD program, not to get about me, but what I'm trying to say to young people and people interested in STEM kind of education, science, technology, energy, and mathematics. My gosh, when we got down to the mammalian tissue level, the cellular level, those little cells are just like living organisms, and they take in nutrients, and they excrete things, and the blood takes the excrement away. And so the deeper that I got into that subject matter, the more exciting it became to me to understand all of the apparatuses in a cell to help that cell survive, which in turn helped the organism survive, which in turn helped us in agriculture, which in turn helped feed the world. And so it's just amazing. And I don't know that we're still on topic, but I'm having a great time talking about it, Tony.
And it's perfect because it takes us into another area, and that is when you're relying on a market to provide you the price, and that market basically disappears, the bottom falls out. And that's where I would think you would say the CARES Act through Congress, which then funded the original coronavirus food assistance program, and now the CFAP2 program really comes in. Talk more about that.
I am really proud of the Secretary Perdue, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, for putting together the programs that they have. And your point was well taken. We've done such a great job in production agriculture that now we have excesses that we need, the term I like to use, we need a lot of extra mouths to help us consume that. And so when you get into a situation, as you just mentioned, where the restaurant and hotel service industry, they dropped off their demand for our products almost like going off of a cliff. And so that backup had an impact on our food supply chain. And so it's really important that we help our farmers and ranchers get through this coronavirus pandemic. And the way to do that is through the programs like the CFAP program. And I want to mention that is 2.0, we're talking about it. But it extends the applications for those programs from September the 11th to December the 11th. So for those that have not got involved for whatever reason, now is another opportunity to do that. There's $14 billion that the Secretary has access to through the CCC program. And by the way, I was glad we got the extension of that yesterday in our CR so that we could continue to have those programs for this production year. And I wanted to mention also, Tony, that tomorrow, and you may have already mentioned this, but tomorrow there's a webinar on making that application for this CFAP Part or 2.0. I think that's at 3 o'clock. So individuals that would like to review their operation and see how they're talking about this program, there is a webinar. And I was really happy. Tony, I don't know what kind of feedback you've had from your listeners and so on, but I was really happy to see USDA set up a farmers.gov website that was specifically dedicated to this coronavirus and pandemic. I think that was very helpful. And then to have the sheets that were available to help you analyze your farm and analyze your production and see how it fit in and what you ought to apply for, I thought an excellent move.
You've done a lot of work, and one of those that you mentioned earlier was the PPP program, and how glad you were that that was available to agriculture as well. But that's one part of this equation. The other part of the equation is moving that product that you grow. And when we start talking about trade, sometimes we don't see our product move exactly in the form that we harvested it. Is it important to keep an eye on all exports, maybe?
Absolutely. I mean, we have done so well in our agriculture production that we need those extra mouths, as I like to say, to help us eat our way through this program. But in doing that, we really help other nations, and we upgrade their standard of living. And so our export markets are extremely important. I think something like 56% of Indiana's soybeans, for example, and 36% of our corn end up being in the export market through the poultry industry. And so in Indiana, you know, we're number 1 in ducks, we're number 2 in eggs, and we're number 4 in turkey. And we also are very good in pork and beef and so on, and corn and soybeans. And so all of those export markets and the countries we send those to are important to our financial security. And it's important that we maintain those relationships with any of those countries that we deem appropriate. And
we talk about the exports, but we also have to talk about how they get to that end buyer, if you will. And in many instances, we're talking about sending them by boat. And as we send them by boat, it just reminds us that there's other ways that we travel and we move around the country. And I'm trying to tie this into one other area that I know you've been following, and that's the Green New Deal. When you start thinking about the Green New Deal and how it might affect agriculture, or how agriculture could be a part of this, what do you see?
I look back at some of the other things that have come to us. The Green New Deal per se, if we're going to try to get rid of all the fossil fuels in any kind of environment in the next 10 years, is very detrimental to agriculture. I mean, we're dependent on fuels. What I have found in my personal observation of these kind of changes, it is important to let the supply and demand have an impact. I think over time those things tend to transition, and as we use the research that you mentioned earlier to develop new technology and new techniques for some of these alternative energy sources, then they can be economically viable. And in that situation, over time, solar or wind and those can have an impact. But certainly at this current situation, we're not at a level where we can supply all the energy that is needed for not only our country and our society, but for agriculture. We can't do that with these alternative energy sources. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't aspire to reduce our emissions, but I think we need to use the supply and demand and the economic demand to let these different alternative sources expand or grow or take whatever part of the energy needs we have on their own and stand on their own. And
It is so good to see you. And again, I hope that we can catch up on things that are going into some of the committee work that you do next time we visit, both on the Science, Space, and Technology and the Agriculture Committee. Will you come back and see us?
absolutely, be a pleasure.
Again, it's the Honorable Dr. Jim Baird. He represents the 4th Congressional District of Indiana, member of the House Ag Committee, on today's Agribusiness Report.